Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining. It's 12:30, so we're starting because we actually need all the time that we can get. Today we're going to talk about Mitre Attack Framework. So Explains is a series we do where we debunk everything about technology and we talk it in a vendor agnostic way. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to talk about technology and more specific about the Mitre Attack and how you should use that. My name is Stan van Hoof. I'm a manager of technology at Exclusive Networks. We are a distributor of everything cybersecurity related. I've been at Exclusive for over 7 years, more than 10 years already in IT security, and my focus is on emerging technology and evangelizing the channel.
My name is Davey. I'm also at Exclusive Networks, of course. Been there about 4 years now. My main focus is really on the technical aspect of everything related to cybersecurity and also with IT in general. Most of my experience for the last more than 10 years already has been in that area of IT security, IT consultancy, cybersecurity in general, the technical aspect. So we're going to kick off this talk with an example of why we need the Mitre Attack Framework, and then we'll dive into it.
Never fear. I is here.
I've narrowed the activity to Terminal 23.
Let's echo 23, see what's up. God wouldn't be up this late. Shit. Get me the switch and control center. I need to trace a call that's in progress. Yeah, hold on, Mom. Hold on 1 second.
Open the door, Joseph.
Yeah, okay. There you go.
Dad, sleep. Now. Sweet dreams, Joseph.
He's gone.
Did you get a trace?
Yeah, we got him.
Good.
So this Oscar-worthy scene was actually from the movie Hackers. It's a representation of an advanced attack in the mid-90s. We evolved a little bit, luckily maybe, but we do need something actually to catch these type of advanced attacks. And that's why we actually need Mitre.
Right, before we can talk and explain what the Mitre Attack Framework is about and why you need it, there are a few terms that we need to understand, few elements that we need to know what it is about before we can actually start talking about it. First things are APTs, Advanced Persistent Threats. So that we'll talk about more about it, but it's basically about who's doing the attack and also what kind of activities or kind of techniques they use. Then the attack framework itself, right, which stands for Adversary, Tactic, Techniques, and Common Knowledge. Basically, the framework is built around TTPs. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but it stands for Tactics, Techniques, and Procedures. It's what the attackers do, what APTs do when they compromise an environment, and which kind of steps they use in order to achieve their goals. These are key elements to understand what it's about, and we're going to kick it off with APTs.
All right, so what is an APT? It stands for Advanced Persistent Threat, but it's used in a double way, because it could be the organization behind the attack, that's what we call an APT, but also the advanced attack itself. So who is behind that? Sometimes there are really some kids on the attic, like Lapsus, for example. They're very good in social engineering. You don't have to have that much skills to do that. But if they're going to use 0 days exploits in a very advanced attack, usually it's criminal groups or nation states, so governments. They're going to be in an advanced way. They're going to be stealthy. They're going to have persistence. So they want to build a backdoor inside your organization, and they want to be there as long as possible to have all the data extracted and then go out with a big bang and some ransomware. Why are they doing this? Sometimes ideology, most of the times it's financial. Of course, espionage, but that's a smaller part, but everything is for money. We are a fan of Mandiant trend reports. We're going to use them a lot. Every number you're going to see today, I think, is from that report. But they're tracking over 4,000 groups. So 4,000 different APT groups that they're tracking that they can identify. And they're motivated for espionage, financial, or we just don't know it because it's not clear, because it's during incident response, they come in, they stop the breach, so the goal has not been achieved, so we don't know actually what the goal was. But just to give you an idea, last year it was 3,500 groups they were tracking, so 500 new groups already in a year. And who do they target? Well, they work very specifically on verticals, because like everything in life, if you want to succeed, you need to focus, and that's exactly what they do. They focus on those verticals. So every APT has like their own flavor, the way that they work, and they attack certain verticals. If you have a lot of money, you're a good target, or you just need to invest a lot of in defense, and then you're less likely to be breached. But everybody is going to be breached at some point.
Right, let's look at 2 examples. Most of you are probably familiar or heard about the SolarWinds attack. I see some people on there. The SolarWinds attack is from 2019-2020. A very sophisticated attack executed by APT29, also known as Cozy Bear. And what these guys did is really it was a supply chain attack, so they really get into the development process of the Orion software that SolarWinds built. They got in there, they put an implant in there called Sunspot, and then actually they waited until SolarWinds published an update of the software to all their customers, getting them all infected at once. Right? What was in there? A backdoor DLL capable of downloading a Cobalt Strike beacon to allow, as you can see here, the hands-on keyboard activity from the adversaries itself. So you can imagine once that software update was released, all these dial-ins came in at the attacker's server, let's say, all these environments dialed in and say, hey, here we are, ready for you to start your quest. So huge attack, very complicated. Look at the dwell time, more than 1 year before it got fully disclosed. Just giving you an idea what an advanced APT is. A second example is from last year, the MoveIt Transfer Zero Day. MoveIt is a secure file transfer software used by big enterprises. And someone found a 0 day in there that allowed them to drop a web shell backdoor to get direct access to the underlying databases and the files that were stored on Azure Blob Storage. It was Fin11, so financially motivated APT group, that was executing this attack. And they went in pretty fast, right? They went in, they got a lot of data out there. That's the whole goal was data theft. More than 2,600 organizations infected. A lot of analysis been done on this one. As you can see, it was also the most frequently exploited vulnerability last year. Right? So 2 examples of advanced APTs, advanced hacks that are out there, not just done by script kiddies. Now, if you take those 2 examples and you take the Mitre Attack Framework, which that's eventually what this talk is about, this is how you could map it, right? The Mitre Attack Framework really has an overview of every component, every step that an attacker takes to achieve its goals. And the goal is, or the idea is, to take all these steps and map them on this framework so you can, when you're discussing it with your peers, with your colleagues, when you're doing an analysis, you can keep track of where you are, what these guys are doing, have they been using this technique, what kind of tools have they been using. This is also what we're going to do today further in this analysis.
So more about Mitre as an organization, because we know the attack framework, but what is Mitre? So Mitre is actually a non-profit US-based organization, and they've been around for a long time. So they started in 1958, and the reason they've been there, because they are a leading organization in a lot of different areas. Aerospace, healthcare, and of course cybersecurity. It's a big organization, over 7,000 employees already. And actually their model was the same from the start. Discover, create, lead. And that's exactly what they do in the cyberspace. We know them from the attack framework, but also from the CVE database. Every vulnerability that gets disclosed will get a CVE score, and it will be published on their database. What they also do is testing of every EDR out there, or every good EDR. And they do just a lot of testing on that, and they publish those results, and it's vendor agnostic. So an organization that brings a lot of good information to the cybersecurity space. But at one point they said we need something new, because we had the cyber kill chain from Lockheed Martin, but that's already from 2011. And this is good for a general overview, but it's not good enough if you want to have an advanced look about what happened and how can we see or enforce our defenses. Because we need to talk the same language. We need a common language, so every defender here can have like a conversation. What did exactly happen? Because if we use different terms and terminology, it's difficult to detect and to protect ourselves. So the attack framework started as an R&D project back in 2013, and the idea was, let's create a framework to track the attackers in the different stages. That's what they did. The naming attack comes from the data they collect. So the adversarial tactics the techniques, and the common knowledge, also known as procedures. They launched in 2015 with version 1. Today we are version 15 already. It keeps on evolving. It's a never-ending story. It's a cat and mouse game, of course. But we also see our focus today is for the enterprise environment. We also see this for mobile and for ICS, so for the industry.
Right, so when you've seen now what Mitre is about, you've seen quickly already the Mitre Attack Framework. So what is important are the tactic, techniques, and procedures, as we mentioned in the beginning. And one good idea to keep track of what these really are is by mapping them on the golden circle of Simon Sinek. I'm not sure if some of you are familiar with it, but basically what he says is that when you try to explain something, start with why before you go to what you're exactly doing, and not the other way around. So think about TTPs in the same order, right? A tactic would be your why. For example, if you're doing an attack or you're analyzing an attack, one of the things they would try to do is achieve credential access. Right? We're not telling yet how or what we're going to do. This is just why we're doing this component. We want credentials. How we're going to do it is then the technique. Right? So in this case, they're going to dump them from some kind of location. Another technique would be to go on the dark web and buy them there, for example. And then what you're going to do is the procedure and the tools, basically. So in this case, they're going to scrape them from memory, from LSAS process, basically dump the memory and get some credentials out of there. That's exactly the procedure that we're going to use. And then the tools behind there are also in Mitre and listed in the framework. Now the framework is also available in sticks format, which is a digital format. If you like automation, you want to do this, process this framework automatically, you can do it. And that's why it has all these numbers. Also to trace a bit like the different TTPs, that you can track them and you're talking about the same thing. So let's walk through them just on the framework itself. This is the same example. So at the top we have the tactics. We can dive in or zoom in on tactic number 6, which is the credential access. And you can see the amount of techniques underneath. One of them is operating system credential dumping, where you could basically go into operating system and try to dump credentials from different methods or different places. And the sub-technique is their LSAS memory. So the LSAS process responsible for your authentication on your machine, on a Windows machine. If you would open that up in the Mitre Attack Framework itself, it would get you to this page, which is of course longer than this, which shows you like, okay, a bit of detail, again, the number of the technique, but also procedures and the tools, like the proc dump, the using of Mimikatz, which is a very famous tool to execute this kind of dumps. So they really give you like a hint and an idea of how attackers are doing this. It's not a very in-depth 500 pages description of how to use this, of course. That's not the goal. It's to give you the goal is to give you an overview of what the adversaries are using, what kind of tools they have in their possession.
So now we've got a background about APTs in the framework, thanks to Davey. So let's do this ourselves. So we're going to do an analysis of a breach, but it's not a real breach. It's something we invented, but it's all being backed up by real data. So all the trends that we read in those reports, we're going to use that type of attack on a company that is being breached. And that company actually is Exclusive Electric, the best value-added power distributor out there. They create batteries. They have an OT environment, which is important for our use case, and a lot of intellectual property, which means you want to protect your data. You don't want it to get out there on the dark web. This is actually now a blank canvas. This is the entire Mitre framework attack. And we're going to use this one now to exactly see what happened during that breach. But it's not that easy to read from behind. So let's focus on these 9 different tactics. And during Davey's talk now, describing the attack, you will see exactly at what stage of the attack you are. So Davey, go on.
All right, everybody fasten your seatbelt, here we go. First thing that happens, we're in a reconnaissance tactic. What the attackers want is they want to gain some kind of initial access. What happened here is Tom is the CEO of Exclusive Electric, and he gets a WhatsApp message on a Sunday afternoon while he's sitting at home playing with his kids from someone who claims to be C-level in the company or from the board of directors saying, hey, there's this document, have you seen this already? You need to prove this, right? But this is an urgent thing. So, of course, he goes for it and he clicks on it and says, I haven't seen the document, but send me the link. He drops the link in WhatsApp, by the way, and he opens up, right? This is a real-life example. We blurred away everything that shouldn't be seen, but this really happened, by the way. And this is called spear phishing through a service. In this case, WhatsApp. Happens in real time, through LinkedIn and all other kinds of programs or chat tools that we use. So Tom gets that, he clicks on the link, goes to the Outlook login page on his phone. Of course, it's okay, the document is in Office 365 probably. So he enters his username and password, gets an MFA notification, push notification to approve that MFA. So all looks good. Unfortunately, this is what happened in the back. He was targeted by an adversary with an adversary in the middle attack. What happened is that attackers deployed a reverse proxy, and these guys are even open source. You can download them if you want, Evil Nginx version 3 already, which actually is designed to steal credentials to sort of mimic exactly the same, give exactly the same representation of a website like the Outlook login, and then even relay the MFA for you. So you have no clue that you're logging in on a fake website. The goal is to, first of all, get the credentials, but also steal the session cookie. Because then the attacker can extract the cookie, put it in whatever browser on his machine, go to outlook.com, and he's logged in as Tom under his profile. Now he needs to be fast because these tokens have a limited amount of lifetime, but he doesn't need a lot of time to execute his next step in this attack. Because what does he want to do? Tom is the boss of the organization. So he has probably a lot of interesting info in his email and contacts. But one of the things the attacker wants to do is compromise the whole environment. So we're looking for a guy who might have administrative credentials somewhere. That guy is Bob. Bob is the IT administrator. So if we target him in the organization and we can get his admin credentials, then we have full access. With the credentials from Tom, not really. So that's what they did. They continued their approach, and they actually dropped an internal email from the email from Tom to Bob saying exactly the same story as before, saying, hey, important document attached, you should look at this now. And this is an internal document. It comes from the big boss, it comes from the CEO. Why would you think it's malicious or it's not correct? It would be different if the attacker would have targeted Bob in the first place through WhatsApp, and he might be, as a security professional as well, think like, this looks weird. This doesn't look weird. So it's an internal spear phishing attack, which is a different approach. By the way, this email was generated by ChatGPT. We did it a year ago as well, so back then we were still like, wow, now we all know what ChatGPT can do. But just to give you an idea how attackers can leverage this, there's no mistake in this. If they want it in your own language, in Dutch, French, German, whatever, it will do it. Here's the email, send it out, there are no mistakes in there. So those times are long gone. So what happens? Bob clicks on the email, there's an LNK file in there, but it has the looks from a PDF. So he opens it up, and we actually now see a decoy PDF opening up. So it looks okay, there's a PDF document. But as you can see, what happens also is that a command prompt gets executed in the back, hidden from the user, so he doesn't see it. Why is there an LNK file, by the way? Because of the capabilities of it. It's used for defensive evasion, because it has metadata capabilities to download these kinds of stuff in the back without you noticing it. And it can also bypass app locker on a Windows environment, which should avoid these kind of things. So we have obfuscated files and info at this stage. Then, what does an executable do? Well, it downloads a bunch of other files, like our own version of WMI, drops some malware on a folder on the C disk, where it looks not suspicious, installs some scheduled tasks to gain persistency, and it executes XSL scripts. Because these XSL scripts can also bypass the app locker capability and can run all kinds of JavaScript and other scripts on the system. So here, few techniques that become in place are the scheduled task, the WMI, XSL processing, which allows the execution on the system, persistency in case that something goes wrong, the scheduled task will start it up again, and of course the evasion of the current defensive capabilities. We're at the current stage now that Bob's system is compromised. So we got a lot further now because now we have access to a system where an administrator is doing his daily work. What do they want from that, from an attacker perspective? The admin credentials. They use a tool called Redline. It's available on the dark web. You can buy it. You can even pay it on a monthly basis. Comes with release notes, documentation, and I believe even support. This tool is an info stealer malware. They're one of many. It can drop credentials from all kinds of password stores, from memory, from your browser, whatever. And of course, what they found in memory is that Bob, at a certain moment in time, switched to his admin credentials for whatever reason, something he needed to do, and they triggered it, dropped the credentials from memory, and got it through Redline. Now the gates are open, of course. What do you do with these admin credentials? You can start walking around the environment and get detected in 5 minutes by the SOC team, or what they did in this case is they created a new user that looks a bit like other users in the environment. This is our marketing guy, by the way. So we created a user that looks a bit like him. Same name, maybe a little character difference, or even using a different character set. We also registered that user on the VPN and added MFA to it. So it blends in with everybody else. Normal user can do VPN access, does MFA approval, all looks fine. So now these attackers have another way of entering the environment through VPN what everybody's using. And if they don't do that VPN from Russia, for example, or China, they will blend in with everybody else, which is also, of course, an easy thing to do. And then, of course, it's almost game over. They do discovery of network resources. They deploy Bloodhound to see what other lateral movement paths are available in the domain. They pivot from on-prem to the cloud environment, etc. So discovery, lateral movement with network service discovery as a technique and valid accounts. Continue their quest. They did a lot of lateral movement using remote PowerShell and again the scheduled task and also system binary execution, DLL injection, etc. to take over systems and have keyboard activity on all of these, dialing out to make sure they can have whatever they want on these systems. I know who of you are familiar with Cobalt Strike, but it's still one of the most used C2 frameworks that are available. There are a lot of more other ones as well, but Cobalt Strike is seen a lot. Also in this case. Actually, the detection was based on the beacon capability of Cobalt Strike, the agent really dialing in and spawning processes and making sure that attackers can execute their commands in post-exploitation phase. So command and control is the tactic and also technique, the tactic that we're in, and the techniques underneath are pretty large. What did they do? Well, they wanted data to start with, so they did exfiltration of data. You can send out the files and try to be not detected, or what they did is install a tool like Packet Whisper and actually get the tools out through DNS exfiltration. Chunk the data into small pieces, scramble it a bit, and then send them out through slow-paced regular queries, and then the system where you send it to collects it all and turns it back into a document. It's slow, but very effective and not easy to detect. I know if you pay attention in the beginning, it was saying this is an OT environment, right? This means that these guys figured out that, oh, this is interesting, right? This is an active company, we want to have the OT environment also compromised. There was only one thing that they can do. RDP was open from IT to OT to manage the systems there, and it was a single domain. 2 mistakes that were made. And they noticed it. They used a tool called Sharp RDP, which is a plugin for Cobalt Strike, to actually do remote command execution over RDP. You don't get the RDP interface, you can just send commands to it and compromise it in the same way. This is again another move, another idea of lateral movement, another approach where they now pivot from OT and to IT to OT and got it compromised there as well.
So we started out with a blank canvas, but if you look everything that happened during this attack, this is the result. And why is this so important? That we understand what happened is, so next time you can catch them. If you have detection on these techniques, you will be able to detect that attack and then to stop it during its attack. Because we're not going to prevent all attacks, that's impossible. Prevention is key, it's very important, but detection is also important. You need to be able to detect it at some certain time. The earlier the better, but at least before the impact. Because we didn't discuss the impact yet. Data is out there, okay, that's bad. But what about the real impact? Usually data destruction. So that could be ransomware, but for an OT environment, they can do a lot more. Okay, maybe we exaggerate a little bit in this scenario, but what actually did happen was the Colonial Pipeline attack a few years ago. Does it ring a bell with anyone? There was a huge panic in the United States. Why? Because the IT environment was breached, and they were so afraid they would pivot to the OT, and they will pivot because there's always a link, that they just shut down everything for almost 3 weeks. That led to panic. because there was not enough oil, not enough gas, gasoline, whatever. So it was a nationwide panic, and that's what really started also the more mature cybersecurity regulations in the US. You saw that once the attacker was in, they didn't use any malware anymore. They did what we call living off the land. Use the tools provided by Windows itself. And that's exactly what those attackers do. So on the top right, you can see all the protocols being used. PowerShell, web protocols, remote desktop. These are all native Windows protocols that you can just use as an attacker to go through the organization. You need to be able to detect this and have tools in place to see any anomalies in there. So what you should do after this session, first of all, is a round of applause, but actually also is to map out your current coverage, because that's important. With the tools you have in this moment, and if it's right configured, you should be able to map out your current detection. And then look inside your vertical. If you're in finance, look what APTs are focusing on finance. If you're in healthcare, focus on that one, because you're not going to be able to map everything, although there are vendors that are claiming they map everything, but that's impossible. So start with focus on your APT and see what techniques are being used, and that's your first start. And challenge your vendors, because there are marketing agencies out there who claim to be cybersecurity, so make sure that actually what they're claiming, that's true. Come talk to us. We have, I think, the biggest boost out there. Talk to your vendors and really open up the discussion. Because the Mitre Attack Framework shouldn't be a sales tool. It should be something to help and build our defenses. And that's it.
Right.
So thank you.